All right. Eric and I are here today. We're doing something a little different. We don't have a guest in the studio, but we have our first non-family guest. We're excited to bring Rachel with Links to Messiah. She has a podcast. I've been promoting her on our social media the last 2 weeks, but we're excited to have her today. So Rachel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I would like, Rachel, just start with what's your testimony? Because I found you because of your testimony and what you've been promoting on social media. And I was like, this is someone I want to talk to.
Oh, you found me because of my testimony. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay, well, let's just dive on in. Um, so I was, my dad used to always say, I was born at a very early age. Okay, never mind. Bad joke. So I was raised actually in a Messianic Jewish home. And so what does that mean? So I get my Jewish heritage from my father, and my dad was a Holocaust survivor. He came from Vienna in 1939. He was 2 years old. And so his parents, my grandparents, they worked very hard to get out of there because it was 1939. So Hitler was already in Austria doing his thing. And so my grandmother apparently went to the US consulate. She wrote letters to tangential people that she knew, trying, because at that time, in order to come to the States, you had to have a sponsor. And so she was desperately trying to find a sponsor through any means possible. So eventually she did get a sponsor. And in 1939, so my dad was 2 years old. I think I said that. They took a train from Vienna to Italy. I can never seem to recall the name of the city in Italy. But then from Italy, they took a big boat to New York City.
Oh my
And so they arrived on Columbus Day, 1939. There's the Statue of Liberty, and they're coming into the country, not knowing the language, having zero money, having no jobs. They did have a sponsor, and as it turned out, the person who was supposed to sponsor them really fell through. So they were just kind of on their own. And so it's the consulate or the Jewish, I can't remember, but somehow they were sent to St. Louis to start their lives. And so that is what they did. So trying to learn the language, trying to find jobs. My grandmother and grandfather did all kinds of, very menial jobs just to sort of put food on the table. At one point, they lived in an abandoned train car, and it's winter. St. Louis is very cold, and the windows were broken. There were mice and rats and all kinds of things. So they had a very rough go of trying to start their lives here in America. And they did have one like chest that my grandmother had packed, with like candles and linens and all those kinds of precious things. Those were like her precious items that she wanted to save. And she had sent them, and they were, I guess, sitting in Rotterdam, and Rotterdam got bombed. And so they literally had nothing.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, so my dad was an only child, and so he, because both of his parents were working, he had a very lonely childhood. Yeah, and so when he was in high school, there was a guy, Larry, who carried all of his books, and at the very top of his books, he always had his Bible. And my dad had like real hard life questions, and he wanted answers. And he asked Larry all the questions, and Larry always opened his Bible and had an answer for him.
Wow.
Yeah. Ooh. And it was life-changing for him. So my dad got saved in high school.
Wow.
And in turn, his parents came to know the Lord as well before they died. So what a
Oh, that's
cool,
neat.
isn't that amazing? Yes.
Wow.
I remember my dad telling me that my grandpa was watching a Billy Graham crusade. That's how he got saved. And he used to watch, I can remember because our grandparents lived with us when we were growing up. And I remember my grandpa watching Billy Graham, and he would slap his knee every time there was an invitation. He would say to my dad, Herb, Herb, with his accent from Europe, Herb, every time they come every time. He just couldn't believe that all these people were coming to Christ on TV. He's watching it on TV.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes. So, my dad, because he God put in him this love and desire for the word, and because that's where he found his life answers. So he went on to seminary, became a pastor, and then he and my mom met. My mom is this Midwestern. She was, this Gentile Jewish or Gentile Jesus loving and loved the Jewish people. And we always joke that she had a PhD in common sense. As we know, is not very common anymore.
No.
So they met and married, and my mom, like I have the most beautiful memories of my mom, like on Shabbat. She learned the Hebrew prayers. She helped to really instill in my sisters and I our Jewish heritage. So we did, we can talk about all the different things that we did, but I have vivid memories of her on Shabbat on Friday nights. So traditionally, Shabbat is from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. And it kicks off with a meal. And so she would light the candles and she would say the Hebrew blessings. And so my sis, we just grew up memorizing and learning all those Hebrew prayers. It was just a part of our vernacular. So you had sort of asked to kind of explain, well, what is a Messianic Jew? What is that? So you want me to dive into that?
A little bit. I think you've given a good start.
Yeah. Well, because as we know, most Jewish people in the world don't embrace Jesus as the Messiah, right? So I guess the best way to explain, like, what is a Messianic Jew? It's someone who has that Jewish heritage, wants to maintain that Jewish identity, and yet acknowledge Jesus as a Messiah. That's a pretty basic explanation.
I think that's a good one. I think that's a good way to put it. Honestly, I would love to hear more, Rachel. What memories do you have growing up that connect you to the festivals or to the Sabbath? For someone for years, the only festival Brian and I have ever celebrated with any type of, we do it every year, is Passover. But I always say, I would love to somehow get into all the festivals. And the Sabbath, I know, is such a blessing. Where do you even begin? How do you start?
That is a great question. Well, like for us growing up, Sabbath was just part of our routine. It was part of our rhythm. It was part of our ritual. It was just what we did. Friday nights, we would have our dinner. And I recently interviewed Jeremy Pryor. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He is phenomenal. The podcast that Links to Messiah put out of me interviewing him, I want to go back and take notes because it's so good. It's like he's just so knowledgeable. I'm trying to recall the three things that he talked about with beginning to establish some sort of routine. The first is that it has to be fun. Right? It has to be enjoyable for our children.
Right.
And so, that's really Links to Messiah is all about, let's bring the fun to all of these festivals and make those Old and New Testament connections. And secondly, it has to be sustainable. So sometimes when we think about doing a Shabbat dinner, if you've seen what a Shabbat dinner is in a traditional family, that can be very overwhelming.
Yes.
How in the world am I going to prepare this meal and say these prayers and do all these things, blah, 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 blah. But we have to remember that the Sabbath was created for us, right?
Mhm.
It's for our rest. God invites us into that. And so I think something that he suggested to make it sustainable is just start out very simple. Maybe it's a pizza night. Maybe it's your favorite meal from your local restaurant. And then you can start to add in some other things as you go. And as you're adding those things, he talks about adding something meaningful. Because in my conversation with him, I realized that my parents, through all of these traditions, they were establishing for me my identity. But I didn't realize it as it was just happening. It was just a part of what was going on in my life. So enjoyable, sustainable, meaningful. Start out really small. It can start very small and make it really fun. Like we used to drink our grape juice out of a wine glass. And I thought I was so
Right.
fancy. Like that was so fun for us, right? As kids with like
Yep.
a wine goblet or whatever you want to say.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
that was fun. And we looked forward to that. And that sort of built in some accountability because, you know, we were like, well, yeah, well, we want to do that again.
So that's great, Rachel. I love that. I actually just took notes. Fun, sustainable, simple, and meaningful. That is
Yes.
so helpful because I feel like I can do that. I can
Right.
come up with something simple
Yes.
and fun for my kids, but has meaning. I
Yes.
love that. Thank you for
And
sharing.
I think with every step that we take towards maybe celebrating Shabbat or Passover or whatever it may be, to continue to add meaning in, because the first two things are great, wonderful, but if there's no depth and meaning behind it,
Right.
so it's fun, great, but there's more to life than just having fun.
Right. Right.
And so there are so many beautiful Hebrew blessings that families can learn and say in English, you know, blessings over our children on Shabbat, blessings over the boys, blessings over the girls. So there's lots and lots of ways to do that.
Do you speak Hebrew, Rachel? Do you say the blessings in Hebrew?
I do say the blessings in Hebrew. Like I have certain things memorized,
Could
just as
you?
my mom memorized them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you
Well,
say
like,
one of the blessings for us?
well, like on Friday nights, we light the candles and we say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoto levitzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
In the
Which is,
translation.
blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe. I have to. It's like A, B, C, D. You have to go in alphabetical order. It's so funny. I can't think of the English translation right now.
I threw you. Sorry.
No, oh no, that's fine. Whatever. It doesn't bother me. But it's funny that I can't think of it right now.
Isn't like King of the Universe who parts of it I was
Who
catching going,
brings
oh, I know
forth-
that.
Who brings forth
Yes.
bread from the earth and
Yes.
commands us to light the candles on this festival. Fill in the blank. Shabbat, Pesach,
Yes.
whatever.
Because we say some of that for Passover.
Yes.
So I'm like, oh, I know some of that. That sounds really familiar.
That's right.
But
So then, Rachel,
Veronica, did you have?
Yep. Rachel, can you explain what Links to Messiah does and how you're helping to help families bring Sabbath and the festivals into our homes?
Yes. Well, I started Links to Messiah. I shouldn't say I started it. God just plopped the idea in my head. And I really feel that as the idea was coming to me, I don't know how else to explain it. It was like this fully formed idea. We're going to do boxes. We're going to start with boxes. And it's a way to bring my childhood to families. So it's helping adults, it's helping children, it's helping families see Jesus in Jewish life through these themed boxes. So we do boxes, we have podcasts, we just launched the Shabbat Club, as you know, you all helped with that. We have a blog that honestly I haven't been very consistent with. And I always try to do a lot of freebies. People love freebies. And there's lots of ways to reach people, but it's really the boxes in particular are designed to hit on every sense. So we want families to taste something, to listen to something, to be able to read something, to be able to watch something, to have a game, an activity, something that's hands-on. Because my background's in teaching elementary ed as well. And so we all learn in such different ways. And so the box is kind of something for everyone. And they're geared towards elementary school age. But here's the interesting thing. I've talked to several mothers just recently and grandmothers who have like a wide range of children of ages. And I've just learned that their teenagers, even up to age 15, love the boxes.
Wow.
And I was really surprised, pleasantly surprised and thrilled about that. I was like, that's so cool seeing a 15-year-old
Right.
take part in these activities.
So then what's the best way for people to find you, to get involved, to get your boxes, to learn more?
So everything's under Links to Messiah name. It's very easy. So you could Google Links to Messiah and you can find the website. The boxes that we have, the next round, so to speak, we're doing a fall feast box. So the fall feast box is going to be Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. It is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. It's the Day of Atonement. And then the box will also include some fun things for the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Booths, which is called Sukkot. So anyway, so that's the fall feast box coming up. And it's the same with the podcast. You can just search in any streaming platform, Links to Messiah, and there it is.
And so you would just order the one box and it would come in with instructions, how to use it, what to do.
Thank you. That's a great question. Yeah. You can either order like one-off boxes. A lot of people do subscriptions. We do 4 boxes in a year, and they're all based around Jewish festivals, Jewish feasts, and Jewish holidays. So we've done Purim, we've done Passover, of course, Passover every year, Hanukkah every year, because people love Passover and Hanukkah. They're the most known in the church community.
Right.
But even though we do the same holidays, every box is very different. So every box will have a different game, a different activity. So if you ordered Passover box one year, next year your Passover box will look very different. And each box does have like a parent guide. And usually the activities last, depending on the box, anywhere from 5 to 7, sometimes 8 days of different activities. So it'll say,
wow.
Day 1, do this. Day 2, do this. And then inside the box, each activity or whatever craft is individually wrapped and labeled. Activity 1, activity 2. So then the kids get to open something, throughout the week. So it builds a lot of excitement. It's like Christmas. Oh, the box is here. We get to open up all the goodies.
It makes it so much easier. Veronica is extremely creative. Like she can find stuff. She enjoys doing it. She'll put it together, but I need help. I am not, my mind just does not. And so I love the fact that you're actually sending everything I need because then I'll do it.
Yes,
I will actually take the time to do it because it's all right here. I don't have to find it. I don't have to figure it out. We're busy moms.
Yeah.
We need help. We want to do these things, but we need help. And so I love the fact that you're just, here you go. I'll do it for you. Just do what I say and you're good to go. Like that's amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yes. And that's you explained it perfectly because that really is the idea. So I can curate and pull together curriculum and send it out and say, here you go. Have a great week. You're going to learn so much about the fall feast. You're going to learn so much about Passover. And all of it is really focused on that connection to Jesus as our Messiah. That's why it's called Links to Messiah. In fact, my maiden name is Links.
Oh my goodness. That's very creative.
Links to this.
God is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think helps families when they start celebrating these festivals? What do you think it does for the family, for their connection to scripture, their understanding of the Bible?
Yeah. Well, my hope and prayer and goal is that it really solidifies a child's faith, that it can help to make their faith their own faith, not like I believe this because my parents believe it. And I think it really helps the Bible to just come alive in their minds and in their hearts. And again, it's making those connections between the Old and New Testament and seeing the Bible as a full redemptive story. So when we're talking about Passover and we're talking about the exodus of the Israelites, into the promised land from Egypt, how does that relate to Jesus? What is the connection? So we're always talking about the connections to Jesus and how it all points to him and how he is the fulfillment of everything that was prophesied in the Old Testament.
Wonderful. Well, I don't know if our listeners can tell, but we've had a little bit of delay issue with Veronica. So if you hear it, listeners, I apologize, but we're hanging in there and it's going well. But Veronica, did you have any more questions that you wanted to ask?
No, I think this is a good time to just wrap it up. Unless Rachel has anything else she wants to add.
No, I have loved getting to know you both. And it's just been really fun to make real life friends from social media.
Yes.
It's the good side of the internet, and I like being on that side.
Yes. Very true.
So what I'll do in the show notes is I'll put all the links to Rachel. Her Instagram is how I found Rachel initially.
Oh,
and then I started digging
yes,
into, who is this person and what is she doing? Because truthfully, there's so much now when I listen to Rachel's podcast, I go, Erika and I think that. Erika and I talk about that. And I kept seeing all these connections and I'm like, this is right along with what we're trying to teach and do. And so if we can help promote Rachel and point people to her and go, okay, we're not the only ones. And she's a Messianic Jew. So she really does know what she's saying.
Hopefully on most days, on a good day.
But so Rachel,
she's doing things we're not.
Yes.
Sorry.
Those are good. But Rachel, we're just so thankful to have you here and been able to help promote your Shabbat club. But I know our listeners will be hearing from you more in our future because I'll keep promoting you and saying, hey, listen to this. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it goes both ways because it goes both ways. I love your podcast very much. I love the depth and thought, and obviously a lot of prayer that you all put into your episodes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you all next week.